too short to set up strings. Good morning, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started with this session on the role of finance in transforming food systems. I'm really honored to be here. My name is Danny Nierenberg. I'm president and co-founder of Food Tank. We're a research and advocacy organization really devoted to highlighting stories of hope and success in food and agriculture systems across the globe. And we do that with the aim to inspire, motivate, and ultimately activate positive transformation in how we produce and consume food. So again, really excited to discuss the role of finance and the transformation it can help catalyze and how we produce and consume food. So I want you all to join me in welcoming Daniela Kiriak, the director of the Climate Shot Investor Coalition at the Climate Policy Initiative, which is an organization that I've known for many years and long admired. So thanks so much for being here, Danielle. It's my favorite name, obviously, so I'm so glad you could be with us. I'm hoping you can start off the conversation by telling us more about Climate Shot's work and why it's important.
Sure. Good morning, and thanks so much, Danny, for having me. It's a real pleasure to be here, and happy Food and K Breakthrough Agenda. And it aims to scale up and accelerate the finance needed to shift agriculture and food systems towards a low-carbon, climate-resilient, and nature-positive pathway. And ultimately, the outcomes we're trying to achieve are to build more consensus on what are the priorities in the sector. And then we also are promoting the use of evidence-based tools and methodologies for investment. So that looks at how to address transaction risks and costs, and then looking at how to measure in a scientific way the impacts of those investments. So ultimately, yeah, we are trying to convey all this to the investment community, to make the link with the scientific community in order to help to scale up those investments in agri-food.
Can you talk more about how that works, linking the finance and investment community to the scientific community in a way where they understand each other?
Yeah, so the way we do it is the coalition is including asset managers, is including some development finance institutions, as well as research institutions like CGIAR, technical assistance organizations. And we have two action groups in which our members are opted to join. One of them is focusing and is led by CGIAR and is focusing on promoting and showing the members what are the tools available out there for impact measurement, for risk assessment, and so on. So this is one way we are doing it. And then through our knowledge products as well, through our research that we are producing, we are looking at what is available in terms of evidence. Another way we do it is through the third component of our program. It's called the Connector, and it's aiming to, we are working with agribusinesses to help them first identify what are their climate and nature impacts, and then as much as possible quantify those, and then include them in their pitches to investors so that they can already use the same language that investors would understand. So basically to unify, to create the same language there.
I always wonder, so like 5 or 10 years ago, would agribusiness have been as sort of interested in this kind of work? Because I feel like, and maybe this is very jaded, I feel like they could get away with things before that they can't now. And so they're very interested in this work because they have to be, right? Because consumer demand is sort of forcing them to. What has that shift been for someone like you who's so deeply invested in this space and sort of learning how to convince them and bring them along on the journey in a different way?
So we work mostly with small-scale agribusinesses in developing countries, and it's not really about convincing them. I think it's more about them seeing the reality on the ground, being confronted with farmers who are already facing the impacts of climate change. It's not a choice anymore. There's no alternative but to take that into account. So it's more the how. It's more what are the practices, what are the technologies that are able to bring those adaptation methods to the farmers, and then how can they get the finance they need to expand their businesses.
Right.
And what we are also trying to do, that's why we work with them, is to have those bring the real evidence to them so that we diminish the risk of greenwashing, so that they know what they're talking about based on scientific evidence, not based on what they might have heard. Because, of course, for an SME in Africa, having access or having the time to look into scientific evidence is not obvious.
Right.
So yeah, there needs to be a lot of capacity building on both sides. So I'm talking about the investees, but also the investors.
Right. So that connector.
That connector, that's what is aiming to do, to create a common language, to build capacity awareness on both sides so that we can link that.
And this is but that need for common language is something we've seen for many years. I mean, I think the food and agriculture community has so much to learn from sort of the energy and fuel sectors in terms of like being able to speak a language that everyone can understand. But that's very difficult to achieve.
It is, yeah. And we were talking earlier about new concepts that are coming up, and they are picked up in a different way by the public sector, by the private sector. So we were talking about regenerative agriculture and how the private sector really picked up on that concept, and how I see, and I'm happy to see those, the movement from multinational agri-food corporates and investors that are starting to make commitments to invest in regenerative agriculture. There's a slight issue there, is that it's a new concept and it's not really well defined.
Right.
So it's like, okay, we're going towards that, but how do we go about it? So let's define it first. So that's my first encouragement. And then it's weird because, again, the public sector is still talking about climate smart agriculture, about sustainable agriculture, about agroecology. So we have, again, a gap there. Are we looking at the same investments? So we really need to, and I guess the civil society researchers can do that work, but the two sectors do need to align more on having the same objective, to know that when we want to move agri-food systems, we go in the same direction, not in divergent directions.
You mentioned this need for sort of common definitions for things. Regenerative ag, there's so many definitions. And so how do you sort of navigate that when you're talking to investors?
Well, what we are trying to do is to map out what is out there, to bring kind of ring the alarm bell on some of the things that are missing. We are not the best position to start to make those definitions.
Right.
We push for those. We call in our research products for increased work on defining those,
Right.
and what exactly they mean, and defining the parameters, the metrics to measure that impact. So yeah, that's what we do. We are calling on that, and then bringing what the new evidence that is coming up, bring it to our members.
Thank you for that. Climate Chat has different action groups that I think are trying to move this work forward, and I'm wondering if you can describe them.
Yeah, I just mentioned earlier the one which is on evidence-based tools.
Right.
So it looks at what are the tools out there that investors can use to map the risks of their portfolio or of their one specific investment, so to screen their investments based on physical climate risks. Especially in agri-food systems. So with that, we work with CGIAR, and they have put together some tools for that, and we promote them, and we show them to our members. We also encourage them, if they want to pilot them, to get in touch with us, and we would support them in that. The second action group, it's actually, we call it the action group number 1, is looking at innovative finance, because that's another big issue in agriculture and agri-food systems, is the high risks associated with investments, and it's a major barrier. So in this action group, we also expose the members to different models, to different instruments that are out there, how other people have structured their investments or their financial instruments in order to blend. We talk a lot about blended finance. We talk a lot about de-risking mechanisms, about how concessional finance can absorb some of the risks so that we could catalyze participation from the private sector. So this is the ways in which we do it. And then you are probably also familiar with the Global Innovation Lab for Climate Finance, which is an accelerator for financial instruments that is also run by CPI. And we actually have a partnership between Climate Shot and the lab to support for the next 3 years, we will support every year a dedicated financial instrument for agri-food systems. So the idea is to also foster more innovation in agri-food systems into how we disperse and deploy that finance.
It's so critical to be able to do that so that you can get the kinds of investments that are needed to really help the food and agriculture sector become more resilient to the climate crisis. One thing that I'm very interested in, and I know we'll have more information, I hope, today about the FAO Global Roadmap to 1.5 and Zero Hunger. What are your hopes for that report? Or the first part of it is a 3-part series, right?
I have heard of this roadmap being in the works for a while now, so I'm really excited. I hope it will bring together, because again the agri-food system is very fragmented, even in terms of roadmaps. There is some existing work that's being done, like the FOLU coalition.
Right.
They already have some pathways, and I also know that the World Bank is in the process of putting together a roadmap for decarbonizing agri-food systems. So I just hope that there will be a kind of an umbrella publication or a roadmap that is able to bring these pieces together, that we have a coherent roadmap that is bringing together leaders from the field, so that we avoid having separate roadmaps. So that's my biggest hope, is that there will be a centralizing, or at least something that will put the puzzle pieces together.
Right, because it's confusing to investors, it's confusing to producers,
to countries, to everyone. It's confusing to have so many different roadmaps. Is like, which one is the right one? So we need an authority, and I think the FAO, the World Bank, are in a great position to unify the sector in that sense and coordinate a little bit the action, and to have these different documents talk to each other.
That's the thing. We need to break down those silos, have these different organizations and institutions that are working on the same things to talk to one another, especially when it comes to finance, because it's so critical right now.
Because it's so critical, because we don't have time, we don't have finance. So we really have to be efficient. We really have to avoid duplicating things. And we really have to work together and leverage everything that we can leverage. There is no time to lose any type of resources.
What's most convincing to investors to sort of shift their investment strategies?
If we talk about private investors, in my opinion, are the risks. Physical climate risks, I think this is what is convincing them to start looking into, okay, how do I address that in my portfolio? How do I put conditionalities to my investees to address that? Another one are regulations. I think they are massively important. We see that there is more movement on the voluntary side, which is great. But if we want to reach scale, we really have to start looking at regulations that can also mandate certain moves in the investment sector, but also in the multinational corporates, which are so important in agri-food systems.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and the EU regulation on deforestation is a pioneering move, but it really needs to be adopted at a wider scale, so that we have many major markets adopting the same type of regulations to avoid spilling effects.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. So as we sort of sum up this conversation, you've been at COP this whole week. What do you hope are sort of the final takeaways for you as somebody who works in the finance and investment community?
Well, I hope the COP leaders' declaration on agriculture, food, and climate, I hope it will start to be. I know there's a discussion later today about how to implement it, so I'm very eager to see how we will go about it, how we will implement it. I'm eager to see, agri-food systems now is kind of getting a seat at the negotiation table, but is not being served yet the meal. So we showed in our reports that agri-food systems are massively underfunded in terms of climate finance, so we need 5 to 7 times more than what they are receiving, at least, yeah, for the most conservative scenario. So there is a need for mass investment. So that's my hope, that through implementing that, governments will start to think more coherently about that. private sector will start to think more about it and really put the resources in that. And when I say putting the resources not only at the top level, but go really all along their supply chains, down to the farmers, because we also need this to be just.
It needs to be farmer-centric for sure. Thank you so much, Daniela. Can you let folks know where they can find out more information about Climate Shot?
Sure, I am happy. I have cards with a QR code that takes you directly to our website, new website.
Nice.
Yeah, happy to discuss with anybody here and follow up on any issues. Thank you so much, Danny, for the opportunity.
Oh, thank you.
A pleasure talking to you.
Such an honor to meet you. Thank you so much. Please give her a round of applause. Thank you so much.
Thank you.